Hello, folks. So I'm going to sit there and tell you this. This is going to be the breakdown of my knowledge of Marvel against DC. And I'll do a DC one. I'm not knocking the two companies. For Marvel, they never mess up their timeline. There's characters in their universe that can traverse time, and also at the same time, there's multiple universes, but they don't talk about them unless particular things happen in the events as far as comic books go. So there's a difference between DC and Marvel is DC screwed up because they have to have crises in order to change and alter their timeline. That's their one fault. It's not a bad thing, just it gets things really screwed up because they do mess up on certain characters in the storylines that, like, if you're a comic book person, you're like you didn't need to do it. Like Marvel, and I'm going to give you the rundown right now. So for the live action movies, they're using a little bit of the comic books, which is, all right, we're going to get Kang's character in there, and we're also going to get the Skrulls aspect into it, which expands Marvel. And I'm going to tell you the reason why the difference is, and I also told one of my coworkers, because they shit on Marvel, and I tried to tell them, I was like, no. Jack Kirby, Stan Lee made one thing is if they made a divergence or like what we're known as variants of a timeline or alternate worlds of our characters we know, Marvel made one straight line. The divergences are separate characters that have entered into our universe. One was Cable. So in the main universe, Cyclops, Jean Grey, had a kid, Cable. They sent them to the future. They made a different variant off of, in the X-Men's chapter, a different variant of the timeline. So, knowing that, like, they did that. So when he comes back later on in the comic books, his one mission was to kill Gambit. The reason why he wanted to kill Gambit is because Gambit set up for what he thought the future was going to be. So he diverged. But the main timeline never changed for when he came back, and this is why we know X-Force for what X-Force is. So Marvel never messed up. Marvel never made a crisis. Marvel always made up like a grand scheme of something that made that one universe was the continuity of what we know in the Marvel universe. So that's my argument on that. Anyone that knows comic books, I'm gladly, please respond in the Dark Domain Instagram page or YouTube, whatever. Like, these are good discussions. It's like, to make a good story, Marvel's done it where they never distracted. They said it's like there's one straight line, and this is like science. Time has one straight line, but there's divergence, which is the idea, the principles of multiple universes. They did it, but they did it where it never interferes unless they decide the character to come into it. DC is my argument. I'm not knocking DC by any means. I like DC. I'm just saying DC screwed up when they do crises, where they, in a sense, erase one timeline to do another timeline. That's bad. I think, me personally, as a big fan of Flash, I personally think Infinite Crisis, when that happens, yeah, Flash made a mistake, but at the same time is you didn't close the loopholes of when he did that. I mean, he did it. He closed the loopholes, but you didn't close any loopholes because then you allow other characters to jump into it. So that's where I feel DC has to fix. It's like, no, make your timeline correct. I know DC had did now. It's called now their comic book is not. It does not say in the comic book, if you buy a comic book, it doesn't say DC. It now says 52, which means it's 52 universes. But to change the logo to say 52 universes doesn't make you don't correct anything. Like, you keep adding crises for them to do it. Where Marvel gives big events, like, for example, like going into right now what Disney is trying to do and Marvel Studios is doing is they're bringing Kang's Dynasty, they're bringing in Secret Wars, Thunderbolts. Now, it all ties in correctly if you've read the comics and you understand all the characters they're bringing out, how they tie into what they're trying to bring forth. Which means the universe never changed. The only person that's changing the universe, as far as will be saying certain things for those who are not comic book readers, you might not get it, but for those who are not, I'm going to tell you. Kang is going to fill in that weird middle part of why he might say some stuff like, oh, I've killed Avengers before, or whatever. The reason why he says that is because he's a time traveler. That's his superpower. So he's outside of the norm of, as they now they portrayed that in the comic books and in what we're watching is Universe 616. This is a Marvel Universe that we read every day. 616. All the other ones have different levels. They're alternate eras, and a lot of the, like, Loki filled in to try to explain, like, there was one path, but there was different versions, but the one Kang and that one in Loki try to keep it as one universe. But the thing is, the timeline is split. So they're using timeline, not multiple universes. They're using timelines. The idea of, like, all right, there's this Earth that we know in the comic books we read. Then there's another one that diverged, even in the comic books, that diverged, which is what we'd say is a variant. So what they're building up is to explain how Jack Kirby and Stan Lee made it was, yeah, there's alternate areas, but there's one main story, and they stay in the continuity of the story. So if you're a comic fan, you know there's the Silver Age, the Golden Age, Bronze Age, yada yada. Like, but it was when they first started, that was how all the characters in Marvel started out. That's their beginning. Then it went to another one where it changed in the times of what we're going through. Like, so we'll say, like, say Silver Age was World War II. Captain America, World War II. So your comic books is World War II. It transformed, then it moved into, like, say, 80s, 90s. These characters already been bought. They're breathing. They're alive. These characters are alive. And now we're dealing with, like, all right, like, Marvel did it in a progression of the time frame. DC gave you Silver Age characters, and then because of a crisis, now these characters cross into, like, modern time. So that's where it gets screwed up for DC. Not saying those are great stories. I'm just saying, you didn't follow your story, where Marvel made sure the stories, like, it was like a continuity in one timeline, even if they had different aspects of different stories in different areas. But they made sure to tell you, like, this is not part of the main timeline. So that's my argument, and I hope anyone else will sit there and give me your opinions. Like, I'm literally serious. Like, I know I'm big on comic books. I know there's many of you guys out there that are big on comic books. but I like to sit there and see your perspective, maybe on one particular book, this and that. I'm excited about Sandman. I'm going to give you a rundown. It's going to drop, I believe, the 5th, which is going to be good. I'm going to watch it. I mean, I've read the comic books. I want to see how true it is to the comic books. So basically, I'm not giving you spoilers or breakdowns of like trailers in this. I mean, I'll watch the trailers and I'll talk about it. But what I'm going to, I keep telling you is like, I watch it, but I'm looking at it in two different perspectives. From book to what we see live action. And I'll give you my rundown, which is my breakdown in the Dark Domain, and tell you, and I'll rate it. You don't have to agree with it. You could hate it. That's fine. But if you watch it and you can form your opinions, and hit me up. Tell me. You can catch me on Dark Domain on Instagram, Dark Domain on YouTube, Dark Domain on Facebook. Let me know your opinions. Like it, subscribe on YouTube, or follow me. I really want to hear what your guys' thoughts. I mean, comic books is one of those things, it hits not just children. Like, I'm like a big kid, but it doesn't hit us. In a weird way, it's a story. I mean, it's like reading Stephen King, which I have met him. But it's reading something and understanding, like, break it down. Figure out what that story means to you. And then share it, read it, or continue following that author or writer or even artist. Like, movies, cartoons, comic books it's our way of expressing ourselves to other people, to get them to either fall into a world that we create, or it's our world, whether it's truth or fiction. Doesn't matter. So my principle is Jack Kirby and Stan Lee did a good thing. DC is doing a good thing, but they have a little loopholes. They have to close their loopholes in order to, for me, the characters I love in DC, to bring them out, they need to close loopholes and tell the story. Keep it in a straight line for, like, at least for the world you're doing. And then do the other stories. Like, bring old characters back. I don't care. It's just, Marvel has done it well. It's like, they stayed in one straight line, even though they have different versions. It's just, give me the other versions for, like, random weird plots in your stories as time goes. Fine. Just keep it going in a straight line. At least keep the main world a straight line. Both industries have amazing characters. Like, you can see my background. All these heroes and villains. That's a lot of characters. DC has the same amount of characters. But the thing is, each one of them link into each other. At least Marvel, each character is linked into each other in one weird way. DC does it, but they mess up when one character does something random, like Flash running back in the past to save his mom. Why make it like, basically don't wipe the slate clean, the slate clean and start over. Keep one world one way. Even if you do, like, his mistake, Flash going back in the past to his mom. Okay, but keep it that maybe one alteration did, but if he corrected it, stay on the course. You know, like, don't make mad drama in their universe and Justice League has to always save it, or one, like, no. Make it like, yeah, weird shit happens, but that's their course of their timeline. That's theirs. And there's others. Which is why it's like, when I do the breakdowns and the rundowns of the next coming up stuff, is a reason is to fill in the plows, and I'll fill you guys in for those that don't know. For those that do know, please comment me. And those that don't, even ask questions. Like, I'm going to give you what I know as me as a fan of reading comic books, collecting them, knowing them. I'll give you the breakdown. Even if I don't know, and you might know something more than I do, please give me your full answer. Like I said, Dark Domain. Subscribe on YouTube. Answer me on Instagram and Facebook. I'm going to try to do another video tonight, and it's going to be about Thor, just a rundown. And I might throw an extra fillers of what they're about to do. So for right now, this is my DC and Marvel rant versus a breaking down of the understanding of like where Marvel's going, their characters, and my feeling on DC. As much as I love both of them. What's going to happen? So I'll catch you later. I will give you the rundowns on other stuff and give you the Dark Domain rundown, and if it's willing to watch, up to you. I'll talk to you guys later.